Welcome to our podcast. Marty Keller here in Sacramento, John Donovan in Oceanside, California. I can tell because the inhale icon is still over your right shoulder there, John.
Yeah.
And our very special guest from the East Coast, Deanna Pfau. Welcome, Deanna.
Hi there.
Always good to be with you. And before we jump into our conversation today, this is the Intentional Living Podcast. And before we jump into our conversation today, I just want to note that this is our third anniversary of doing this podcast. We started our very first podcast, John, you and I, the first week of May 3 years ago.
And amazing.
Who'd have thunk?
Yeah, I know.
And I think, Deanna, you bear the distinction of being one of the few people I know who's watched all the podcasts from beginning. I don't know how
Actually, not to the all end of yet. Them. I'm currently up till January 2023.
Okay,
so I'm a few months behind.
You're pretty close.
I'm getting there.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if that's some kind of special, you get some special award, or whether that's
or
really
just
wacky.
Neurotic. I don't know. Or she just can't get enough of John and Marty.
Or enough of intentional living. I don't know. It's all good.
So, it is. It's all good.
When you first told me that you were doing that, I don't know how long ago you shared that with us. I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah. And so you have actually become an expert on the podcast. You probably know more about it than John and I do.
Oh, the really cool thing about the podcast that I like is I feel like I am just I'm there with you guys, and I get to know you better as people versus just being in the class where you're doing I don't know. It's just like being in a living room with you two. I find it very, very comforting and easy to listen to. Not every topic is easy, obviously, but yeah.
Well, I appreciate that feedback, because that's one of the ways that we can share this message with people in this more informal kind of way. For those who haven't had the opportunity to come to any of the meetings that John facilitates or I facilitate, you may not know that group experience is quite different from what we do here. But I think our philosophy on this, John, chime in if you see it differently, but our philosophy is any which way we can share this message has value. And I know that some people have watched the same podcast over and over and learned something different each time. That's my experience with many things. So, although I can't say I've come back and watched our podcast all that frequently.
Yeah.
That's why I probably couldn't pass a quiz, but so anyway, congratulations, John. This has been a pleasure to work with you the last 3 years, and we did this weekly for a long time, and we scaled back to bi-weekly last fall.
Yeah.
But this has really been a great adventure for me, and I can't tell you how much I love you and appreciate you, and
wow.
Share how much I've learned from you, and but it's just a great collaboration, friendship, comradeship. So my hat's off to you.
Thank you, Marty. And this podcast wouldn't be what it is without the both of us here. So I really appreciate you too.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
And one of the things so we're here the first weekend in May. It's Cinco de Mayo today, but next weekend is Mother's Day. And I know that Deanna has some thoughts that she wants to share with us on that. So unless, John, you have some other opening remarks,
no,
we'll toss this to Deanna and get going.
That sounds good.
So
again, welcome, Deanna. Thanks for being here with us.
Thank you. I just want to take a minute to check in with my body and what's going on. Actually, I'm really calm. That's really good.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay. I have no idea where this is going to go or how much if we're going to rent. I intend not to think about time. I intend to share from my heart and just allow whatever to come. It's a little a little overwhelming because there's so many things I want to share. And we'll just see. We'll just see what comes of it. But just to kind of give the audience a little bit about me, I came into recovery in April 2019. My first meeting, 12-step meeting, was in Overeaters Anonymous. That's what I call home. And I did a year with Al-Anon with a sponsor. I am currently in an ACA meeting, working on my second step in ACA. I went to ACA off and on for about a year. So I'm fairly new to the recovery world. And then I stumbled upon John through another ACA member, and I think that's the way a lot of people come in, maybe through ACA. Is that right?
Yeah.
And word of mouth. And I just am so appreciative of that lady who was like, "Hey, there's this guy. You should check out his meetings." And I did, and I've not left. And I started working on this process in July of 2022, and found out about the podcast and listened to it. It's helped me so much to listen to the podcast versus just going to a meeting. I really do feel like I have a better grasp on the practice, and it's becoming more natural and organic for me. So that's a little bit about me. I want to focus on Mother's Day today because you guys obviously don't talk about Mother's Day. It's a guy's thing. Now, although there was one podcast where you did talk about your mom, I think it was Marty. And yeah, a few times I've heard Marty mention his mom. But I want to dedicate the podcast today to all mothers who are listening and who will listen to the podcast, and to my mothers who are no longer with us here, and to my two precious daughters. I want to dedicate this to them. I want to be mindful of anything that I share, because once you're on the internet, you're always on the internet.
Yeah.
And I want to honor my mother's memory, but all three of them. And I want to just be honoring, and I want to be respectful of my daughters as well. Won't share their names, but I will share a little bit about my relationship with them. So I would say overall, what I would be sharing today would be how recovery and ACA work has changed my relationship with my children, how I look at myself now as a mom, and also kind of just talk about some of the cultural things that put so much pressure on moms, and then the family of origin dysfunction that we all have as moms trying to be a good mother. That's a lot. This topic is very, very weighty. Well, I can just tell you a little bit about my experience with my mom. My birth mother died when I was 2.5, so I never really knew her. And then my dad eventually remarried my stepmother. It was a blended family, dysfunctional. My father was an alcoholic. I didn't have a good relationship with my stepmother. It was hard. It was very difficult. My dad was kind of the quiet drunk, and my mom was the not so nice person sometimes. She struggled a lot. I now know why my mother, who was deceased, was like a Madonna. Needed to protect this image I had of her, because it was a safe place I could go to when when things at home were going crazy. And I would be like, if my mom was just here, everything would be okay. And I think it was a natural thing for me to do, to survive like the craziness, and not understanding why my stepmother didn't love me the way that I wanted her to love me. The disparity between the way she treated her sons and the way she treated me was just a lot of family, dysfunction, and very confusing. Um, and I would talk to my dad about my mom, my birth mother, but I didn't know at the time that there had been abuse toward my mom, and it was extremely painful for him to talk about her. Um, so, you know, what do you say when you're in the middle of this as a kid? You're just trying to make sense of it all, right? You're just trying to
Mhm.
make sense of it all. And my addiction to food began very early on, and it was my survival mechanism. And when I grew up and married my husband and got pregnant for the first time, I was terrified of being a mom. I did not want to be the type of mom my stepmother was. I did not know how to be a mom. And I felt so inadequate and unequipped. It was very hard. And then when my children came along, you know, with your whatever your addiction is, it doesn't stop, right? It just continues to get worse and worse and worse. And so being a mom and having an addiction, you're aware that you want to be a better mother, but you can't. You just can't be a better mother. Um, and the really hard thing about it was that Mother's Day was the biggest setup for sorrow, anger, like every emotion I could possibly have on Mother's Day, I would have. And then when my children got older, I wanted them to love me like I wanted to be loved. So every Mother's Day that would come around, it was just a day fraught with emotion. And as the years went by, I was like, I don't want this day to come. I just don't want to think about this. This is such a weighty thing. And I think that the culture has set us up in some ways for that, because there is this expectation to see these commercials of these amazing mothers, and you read these amazing articles about these women and their mothers and their sons, and you're like, I can never meet up to that. And so and then on top of that, just as a mom, there's constant, and I believe now, looking at this mother guilt that I had, I believe now, looking at it through this work, it was only because of the family of origin dysfunction that I had the guilt.
Mhm.
It constant mother guilt. I'll never measure up. I'll never be the mom I really want to be. I'm going to always let my children down. I'm going to continue to hurt them, because I would repeat some of the same patterns, right? And the sense of coming up short. And when I came into the 12 steps and I started getting recovery, my children were grown. I'm like,
Yeah. Wow.
well, okay, why couldn't I have what I have now back then? Why didn't I know then because then I wouldn't have done as much damage.
Yeah.
And so, it's that thing that you have, like, as a mom. But now I know why, but more importantly, I'm okay with the past now. And I've moved through it. And anytime I feel any guilt, I just like, I feel guilty. I'm guilty. What do I want? I want I want to remember sweet times. I want to remember all the good times. I intend to be and embody all the things now that I couldn't be then.
Yeah.
And it takes that edge off. And now looking at my daughter as a mother, it's just like watching another, like, I'm like, oh my gosh. It's just like you see the same patterns like coming out again, and you're like, and you're helpless to do anything other than own your crap,
Hmm.
love them just the way they are, support them for right where they're at, and that's it. That's all I can do, right? That's all I can do. Um, but what I've noticed is, like, with this work and all the work I'm doing in ACA and I'm in such a better place than I used to be. And now I actually have amazing conversations with my daughters. They're fully aware of what's going on with me. I share everything with them. They know and remember a lot of craziness. And sometimes we'll even laugh about it. But now my oldest daughter, can tell me, she's like, Mom, I I remember I I did have trauma growing up, but I always remember that you had it so much worse. When you tell me the stories about your growing up and how painful that was for you, I totally get it. And you did an amazing job, all things considered. So we laugh about it, and I love that I can have those conversations with her. But I do know that a lot of people don't have that with their children. Even now they're in recovery, they don't have that. And it's okay. It's okay. So, um, those are just some of the things I was thinking. And I want to just kind of like, I just want to sit with it right now. That's it for right now.
Wow. Yeah. You could have replaced that mother with father, and that would have been my story. Um, and when I heard you say that you have conversations with your children about your childhood, and they hear you, that's healing. I've had these conversations with my daughters. I have two daughters. And when I realized actually, when I got into recovery, they were 12 and 10. When I realized that I was in adult children of alcoholics talking about my parents and all the dysfunction I felt several years, and then I thought, oh my God, my kids, oh my God, and this is, they're 16, 17 years old. And so I tried real hard and pushed them away.
Mhm.
I would say, I want to talk to you about what happened to you as a child. And they said, Dad, nothing happened. You were a good dad. You were a good dad. They were protecting me.
Aw.
Yeah. So what I decided was to show them, exemplify now, however old they are. And then this is now, they're 40, in their mid 40s now. So for the last 20 years, I've consciously exemplified the behavior I want to give them. And I closed my mouth. I was estranged from my youngest daughter for many years. We had conversations, but it was just that every once in a while, a phone call. And I came to live with her, and I thought, oh boy, Dad's home. It's like, now we're happy. No, no. I had created a pattern of behavior with her that just because I'm showed up doesn't mean that she's not in a pattern of behavior. I'm not in a pattern of behavior. So I say this like tongue in cheek, but it means a lot to me. What I started doing was picking up the dog poop in the backyard and taking out the garbage and shutting my mouth. And if she came to me, I would listen. And I would ask her, do you want me to process this with you? Do you want me to say anything? You want help? She goes, no, I just want you to listen. So I would take a deep breath and listen, and then ask her, do you anything else? And do exactly what she asked me to do. And then 2 years ago, she came into the living room. I was over her house. She had gotten home from doing something. I was watching my grandson. And she said, Dad, I got something I want to tell you. I said, what? She said, I want you to know that I feel safe around you now. So it's like the healing starts when the healing starts, and that's the time for it. So I'm real glad you brought up this topic of motherhood. I equate it to, you have the experience of mother, I have the experience of father. Parenthood, and then how to reconcile this intergenerational. Once you find out, then it's like, this is daunting. This is like, oh my God. And I watch my children do this behavior, and I go, okay. Anything you need from me? How can I support you? Yeah. So it's tremendously sad about the impact that intergenerational family of origin trauma has on children. And it's also at the same time with the awareness, I'm doing this. I intend to be a loving, caring, nurturing father. And it starts changing. So that the depth of sadness is mixed with the tremendous amounts of joy that it's stopping. I'm being, and I have agency in this. I'm not helpless. I can, so yeah, I'm so glad you're here today. Talk about this.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And just, I know your daughter, before we hit the recording, she came up and was helping you, and she's got good energy. That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, she's our adopted daughter. We adopted her when she was 1, from China, and she's wise beyond her years. She's very zen. She always has been, and such a tremendous force for good. I'm so enormously proud of both of my daughters. I'm not, I'm aware of the struggles that they had and have, and I'm genuinely grateful that we can have conversations without triggers. That shows growth that I feel especially good about, and they feel safe to have the conversation. And my oldest daughter can tell me things without, like, mom's not going to be on edge, mom's not going to get all of her feelings hurt, she's going to be, she's my friend. But that didn't just happen overnight.
No,
it did not happen overnight. And I remember when I first came into recovery, like, the gung-ho on, and the thing that everybody does, wants to make amends right away. I'm so sorry for everything I ever did. And and I remember when I did my when you go to your 9th step, I did that with my oldest daughter, that blew up in my face.
Mm-hmm.
She was so mad how it went down. I was completely baffled because I'm like, I did it just like my sponsor told me to do, and this is not, and they're like, well, you don't know what you're going to get. But it wasn't that she didn't accept my amends. She was like, you're informing me of things I didn't even know you did. And I was like, oh, great. Oh,
Yeah.
great. Now I just made it 10 times worse. And she was crying, and I'm like, oh, it was a disaster. It was a disaster. And I thought, okay, now back to ground zero, back to square one. But eventually, over time, it's the standard thing when you go into recovery and you start changing. The people in your life are like, I don't know what to do with you.
Right.
And then I went through the phase where I'm like, I've got 5 sponsees at one time, and I'm going to 10 meetings a week, and I'm, reading the big book like my hair's on fire. And, my oldest
Mhm.
daughter's like, Mom, what are you doing? Like, you were supposed to watch Judah and you didn't show up. Like, she let me have it. And that was a wake up call. Like, when she
Mhm.
had that conversation with me, I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, now I know what they mean by we don't live to recover, we recover to live.
Right.
But, that's the way it is for a lot of people in the very beginning. And I made all the rookie mistakes. And, and of course, I still make mistakes.
Mhm.
I was supposed to
Right.
go to a children's museum with them like 2 weeks ago. And she told me the night before what time to be there. I forgot the time. I was going to be late, not by a whole lot, but she's a very punctual person,
Mhm.
and she she can follow you on, she can find me on my phone, and on my phone she could tell I was still at home, and she calls me and she goes, Mom, why aren't you here yet? And I said, I'm leaving out the door. And then I got in the car because I was lying, and I was like on the way over, and I'm like, I don't want to have this big thing with her, because sometimes in the past she would like really give it to me. And I thought, well, I really deserve it. But I called her and I said, honey, I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry. You did tell me the time, and I just forgot it. But I do this a lot, and I just hope you'll forgive me. She was completely fine with it. We ended
Mhm.
up having a beautiful day. But it's little things like that,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And those are living amends. And I don't try to make up excuses. I just own it.
Mhm.
Like normal, healthy relationships should look,
Yep.
versus in the past, like making excuse after excuse. Oh, whatever. And your kids, they pick up on, they can tell when you're just blowing smoke. And they won't
Yeah.
have it.
Yep.
She especially won't have it. And I love it because she's brutally honest and she's very insightful. She can tell when something's up with me too. Like, what's going on with you, Mom? I'm like, wow. She can sense it. Like, she's just like a radar.
Yeah, and
And
Deanna, consider the possibility she didn't fall far from the tree, so
no, she did not.
she inherited your vibes.
She did. And we had a great conversation last week. I don't even know. It was post an ACA meeting, and I forget what I was telling her. Something about, that was when I was growing up, and um, yeah, it was just, and then she just was sharing back and forth, and I was like, it's dawning on me as we're just sitting here talking, because we're on the phone close to an hour. I said, it's dawned on me as I'm sitting here that we're both really going through a lot right now. Like, I'm doing like this really deep work, ACA, and the work with you, and and it's just sometimes it's just you get tired.
Mm-hmm.
You really get tired. And I said, but you're in school getting your doctorate.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, oh yeah, mom, and don't forget I'm raising a toddler. And I said, yeah.
Yeah.
I said, so it's really cool that even though we're in different places, we can support each other. It's just, I get off that phone and I was like, how did this happen? Like, she was such a hard kid to raise. She was very strong-willed, so different than me. I wanted her to be snuggly. She was never snuggly. She was always pushing me away. She was very fun. She was so different than me. And forever, I wanted her to be somebody for me
Yeah.
because it was all about me.
Right.
And she was never going to be that. She was going to be her. And now, like, I can celebrate her for who she is now. But yeah, remember that. And I'm like, and so I'm like, how did I get here? Oh, that's right. I did the work.
Mm-hmm.
I did the work, and it's ongoing, and it's a very organic, changing thing. And I'm not, um, it's not all rainbows and unicorns. I know we're going to have moments.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's what a healthy relationship looks like. And it's very strange when you sit actually look, you're like, wow, I'm having it. And it's just like, okay, let's sit and celebrate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're like, when you're in recovery, you're like, head down, serious. We got to get this work done. I got to get to it. There's a destination. No, there's no destination. How about just relax, just enjoy being present?
Yeah.
And that's what this work with you has taught me too. Like, just let it breathe. Like your little sign, inhale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, it feels so good. It feels so good. So Marty hasn't said anything, and I want to hear from Marty.
Thanks, Deanna. I was thinking about one thing I remember my mom saying. So my mom and my dad had they had 10 kids, four of whom died in infancy.
Mhm.
Oh.
And so we had this endless turmoil. I remember once somebody said, your mother was either pregnant or just getting home from the hospital with a baby. And so that lasted for 11 years. My youngest brother's 11 years younger than me. Um, he just turned 60.
Mm.
And
Wow.
and there were five boys and one girl. And uh, my mom she had one sister, and her mother died when my mom was five. So she
Mm.
had significant abandonment challenges, and she didn't know boys. I mean, she married one, but other than that, these male creatures came along basically every year or so.
Male creatures.
I can't, I can't, I can't believe that my mom didn't kind of have that experience, and I don't know. She didn't have recovery, so what was going on in her mind? I don't know that she had anyone that she could say, "I don't know what to do. This is scaring the shit out of me."
Mm.
And then she was in that generation post-war, or yeah, she was a depression baby. She was a teenager after the war, World War II, and that was the greatest generation. It was their characteristic was suck it up and do it, just do it. And so she sucked it up and she just did it. But I remember times when I was a teenager and my brothers were 3 and 4 years younger than me, and then my sister. My mom would grit her teeth and she'd go, "Wait till you have kids. I hope
Mm.
they treat you the way you treat me."
We're laughing, but yes.
Well, then of course
A lot of moms have said that.
So then I talked to my siblings who are now parents, and they report that their kids indeed treated them the way we treated mom. So I just think about that the challenge of the intergenerational energetics, because I think one of the handicaps that we have is that um, when so I was the oldest grandkid on my dad's side, and I was the second oldest grandkid on my mom's side. So I got to know my grandparents, and they were like these magical, wonderful people because they had their kids were gone and they could do what grandparents can do. And John, you know a little bit about that. And
Yeah.
oh, actually, Deanna, you do too.
I do too.
You know, you can have fun with them and then leave them to the parents to take care of the tough stuff. Um, but they never talked about their childhood.
Mm,
My grandparents did not talk about their childhood, and it never occurred to me to ask them. So I don't know much about what their lives were like in terms of the psychology of what were their challenges, what were their dysfunctions, what were my great grandparents like to them. So we don't. I don't know about you guys, but that's not conversation that we often have in the families.
mm,
Um, so the handicap we have is kind of our history is opaque beyond our own parents. We don't really know what their childhood was like, and we certainly don't know what our grandparents' childhood was like. What I learned from accountability practice is that if I want to know what their childhood was like, let's look at my own, because it
yeah.
tends to just roll
Yeah.
generation after generation, which brings
Hmm.
me a sense of compassion for my grandparents. And then, of course, for my parents being raised in their own dysfunctional circumstances, in a depression where people were freaked out about being able to provide food, jobs, all those kinds of things. And then a frickin' war comes along where um, brothers and sisters and possibly parents are being drafted. And I mean, the disruption that they had was not just their own, what was going on in their own families. So I say all this stuff because um, as you said, Deanna, this recovery is this ongoing process, and every day I'm learning something new. In fact, I just listening to you and John share for a half hour, I've learned a lot. It sparked these thoughts about our challenges in appreciating our families.
Hmm.
In our, as you know, Deanna, from the meetings that you've been to that I facilitate and Dan facilitates, we our checkout includes a gratitude
Hmm.
practice, and I frequently express gratitude for my family of origin. I'm grateful for them. I'm grateful for the circumstances that I grew up. Was it all beautiful, like you said? Hell no. There was death, there was drinking, there was rage, there was fear, there were all those fundamental human emotions that then all came rolling down, avalanching down on us kids who had no defenses. And so we rolled with it. We did the best that we could with our experiences. Um, but I wouldn't be who I am without that family, without my mom and my dad, and without my grandparents, and without my siblings, the ones who survived and the ones who died. I mean, they're all
Hmm.
part of this thing. And so um, I'm grateful for that family. I'm grateful for the things that went wrong as well as the things that went right. Again, because these are all the elements that created me. And as I learned through accountability, they ceased being the things that pissed me off, or more to the point of something you said earlier, they cease to be the things that I avoid facing and talking about, and they become my friends who teach me. They become my opportunity to go, what was that all about? I mean, I still do that. I was facilitating a meeting last night and I got so off track. It's like, oh my God, I had to apologize because I was in my own shit and I wasn't paying attention to it until basically somebody burst into tears. And I had to say, uh-oh, this is I had to own it. So it's still an ongoing challenge to, as you said earlier, to be willing to face our stuff and own it. And I'll just end my thoughts by saying, the other intention I set for myself, apropos of what happened, is I intend to let myself off every hook I put myself on. Because that's how you, I would assert that that's how you created that relationship with your daughters, is you started letting yourself off the hook. And it's like John picking up the poop in the back, dog poop in the backyard. What's communicated to our beloved ones when we start letting ourselves off the hook? Are we not basically saying to them, I'm going to let you off the hook, when they see us letting ourselves off the hook?
Mm-hmm.
And by letting myself off the hook, I mean being accountable. I did that. I'm intending to be a kind person, and I did something cruel. And I want to own it and set an intention to be kind. And then let it go. To me, the hook is not letting it go. The hook is like continuing to berate myself and make myself a bad person, an old habit.
Mm-hmm.
An old habit. And through accountability, I think that the miracle for me is that I have awareness. Even when I'm out of awareness, something in my body is like trying to go, hello, hello, you're out of integrity here. Sooner or later, I start squirming or whatever it is, or I start getting red in the face. It's like, okay, my body has now been trained. This is what John has taught me. My body, John taught me to teach my body to be in charge of informing me
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
of what's going on, and then I can make decisions at that point.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And the beautiful thing I heard you say, Deanna, is, and I never heard that term. We don't live to recover; we recover to live. And I mean, yeah, we're doing this so that we can be in relationship with one another today, not tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I want to give an example of my accountability in my specific to my parenting. Before I say the statement, we work with what I call the accountability tree, and accountability simply means the ability to state the data of where I find myself without blame or judgment. And then feel the truth, feel the feeling in that truth statement of where I find myself. And where I found myself was, and the statement was, I'm a bad dad. And then I took a breath. And that's where I lost the excuses. I lost the need to defend myself. I lost the need to make up a reason why, and just made the statement without blame or judgment. And that feeling tone, it's like in that statement, I'm a bad dad, is encoded in it the trauma that I'm carrying from not only my parents, but we talked about intergenerational, my grandparents. I do know a lot about my grandparents, my grandmother anyway, and then their parents. So we're carrying this intergenerational energetic marker. And then when I said, I'm a bad dad, and just took a breath, there was this sloughing, there was this relief feeling, there was this easing in my musculoskeletal system. And I felt that. I felt the truth of it. I talked about sadness and joy all kind of mixed together. And there was this tremendous amounts of sadness and this elation about what I'm about to say, which is, I intend to be a loving, caring, nurturing father. And it was several years after that, and I was taking a man through this, and I'm a bad dad. he felt it, and then he started going into the story about it. And I said, well, let's stay with this. I'm a bad dad. I intend to be, and I don't remember what he said. I intend to be caring and loving. And then I realized that for me, loving, caring, nurturing father does is in the moment he sees that he's being abusive and or arrogant and or dismissive, say the truth. That was dismissive. So when I said, encoded in this, I'm a bad dad, was the loving, caring, nurturing father. And it was like a constellation of feeling, I intend to be a loving, caring, nurturing father, shifted the subconscious, family of origin, intergenerational trauma, said, oh, wow, validated it, validated the trauma from which the arrogant, abusive, dismissive behavior came from. So in the statement of accountability is the integrity that's always in us. Like I'm mean, or I'm arrogant, or I'm entitled, I'm controlling. In that statement, simple statement, no blame, no judgment, it's a constellation of things. And then I articulate what I want. I intend to be kind. That becomes a directive to this mechanism, brainstem, midbrain, to seek and find kindness for me. Just like as a child, I was told I'm no good. Okay, this simply says yes. How come you did that stupid thing? Oh, I must be stupid. Yes, yes, yes. All these abuses, it just took it on. And then I exemplified the behavior. In ACA, which is Adult Children of Alcoholics, they have 14 traits. And when I first heard them, it was like a relief. It's like, oh, if you're in a dysfunctional family, these are the behaviors that are generated. It's not you, it's the dysfunction, how it manifests in the world. So I did a workshop one time, the 14, the laundry list, a way out. And what I meant by that, and what I said in the workshop, is if I own this, knowing that it came from a mechanism in me that was trying to keep me safe, and didn't know the difference between when I heard you're stupid, it just simply said yes. Well, and it's trying to protect me. So it kept me in a place of safety, of survival, and I couldn't thrive with this belief I had. And when I validated it, I'm mean to the point of cruelty, I'm a bad dad, it relieved and opened up to the suggestion, again, I intend to be a loving, caring, nurturing father. Yes. And things started changing instantly. It was, yeah. And then I just simply do it again. Pay attention to where I'm at. Well, I'm going to be funny here about, oh, I'm not such a bad dad. But it's like I still got that bad in there. Oh, okay, I intend to be a loving, caring, nurturing father. And then 20 years later, my daughter comes into the room and says, I feel safe around you. This process is so freeing, life-generating, and it's in the little things. It's in the conversations about what happened to you today, or so-and-so said so-and-so, and I'm like, and what are we going to have for dinner? It's like Chinese or Mexican. It's like, it's all in there. It's like, before that used to be a big blow up. Okay, I'm open to whatever. I'm good. I like them both now. Anyway, so.
Speaking of food, every time I burn my toast, I think of you, John.
Yeah. It used to freak me out. Toast would burn, I'd flip out. So.
Oh, John Donovan, I burnt my toast. I love it. I love it. Something Marty was saying, and now I can't remember. But it's, I hate when I can't remember when it's so good. Does that happen to you guys? Somebody said something, you're like in the moment, you're like, Oh, that's so
How many
good.
times?
And
How
it,
many times have you been facilitating working with somebody, and they go, "Can you repeat that?" No.
no,
No, no.
no. Um, but uh, the sense was that it was the gratitude.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when I took that was very interesting because when I took a moment to feel my lip like go into my body, it came right to me. Isn't that cute? I love that. Like I immediately, it's like, oh, it was a really good feeling. And then I thought, oh yes, he was thanking, he was being grateful for his family of origin, even all of the things that weren't so wonderful,
Hmm.
that made him who he is today. And and I want to say that too. This work allows me to view my family of origin through a lens of compassion.
Hmm.
Um, and like I really took the time recently to take my kid lens off and look at my stepmother's life through the lens of a grown woman who's a mother. And as if I didn't know her. And I was just hearing her story. There was no name attached to it. And when I did that, and I walked through some very, very painful things that I knew about her that happened to her as a child. Um, she's an extremely abusive father, verbally terrified of him. Children were to be seen, not heard. That was, you know, but yeah, terrified of him. I remember her telling me about that. Her her mom and him were divorced, and she went on to have, difficult. She had difficult marriages, and I remember her saying, when I married your dad, I knew he had a slight drinking problem. And then when they would get in arguments later on, she'd be like, I don't know why I ever believed that you had a slight drinking problem.
Hmm.
I can tell you why. But yeah, just like seeing her life like on a screen, like, oh my gosh,
Hmm.
this
Yeah.
woman, this poor woman, like, no wonder, like, no wonder she was so disappointed by men in her life,
Hmm.
and these things that happened to her. And then with my dad, and you know, there were a lot of amazing things about her. Like she held it together, man. Like when my dad was just flaking out and not bringing home the paycheck, she was a fighter. Like she was a survivor. She kept us all together. She took us to church every Sunday. She did amazing things that make me really respect her now.
Hmm.
And I'm not in that. Oh, I do still go into my ACA teenager mode
Yeah.
sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and but when I really look at it through love, when I look at it through the lens of love, it is so different. It's so different, and I'm so grateful for her. And it was this. I know we're just about done. I'll say this one last thing. It was someone actually in the Saturday meeting. We were having a beautiful conversation, and I had mentioned my birth mother, and she just burst out. She is, well, Deanna, your birth mother was an Al-Anon. Ah, I did
Mm.
not want to hear that. Like it was a reality check. It was a wake up call. Like, oh my gosh, yeah, she was an Al-Anon. Never ever thought about that, and that humanized her.
Hmm.
I needed my mom, my birth mother, to be humanized. Of course, she wasn't perfect. She married my father.
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
She married an addict. So yeah. it's just, I could talk to you guys all day. I love it.
Cool. Thank you, Deanna.
Well, you
You're
make me
welcome.
think of what's that book, The Spirituality of Imperfection?
Oh, I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, I think that's an AA referent, but that we talk about I'm just riffing off what you said. She wasn't perfect, and well, yeah, guess what? Nobody is, and yet
Yeah.
we still carry around this
Mhm.
deeply hidden belief that we're supposed to be, not only that we're supposed to be perfect, but somehow we have the template of what perfection's supposed to look like. It's like,
Hmm.
Yeah.
where does that
It's
come
so
from?
nebulous, that template is so
I
nebulous.
know. Well, it always, actually, what it does is it brings us back to our original love equals. So
Mm.
love equals I'm all alone and deserve to be all alone. Then everything gets filtered through that. That's the interesting way this perfection template works. It's actually not about being perfect. It's about keeping me in my addiction
Mm.
of my old love equals addiction. And so I just laugh now, and that's why I have this intention. I intend to let myself off the hook, because the hook is I got to be perfect. And if I'm perfect, I'll be loved. And I'm never perfect, so I'm never loved. It's like it's just such a rat race. It's
When
such a
you chase
squirrel
it, when you
cage.
chase it down like that, then you do have to laugh at it.
Exactly.
But until you chase it down,
Until you chase it
and
down, you're in love with it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I have a question before we wrap up.
yeah.
So how are you with Mother's Day this year?
Oh man. I we no expectations. Like my daughter, because she's in school, like they don't have any money. I said, don't give me it. She goes, I wasn't going to give you a Mother's Day gift anyway, Mom. I said, well, I said, we have had so many disastrous things happen just trying to go out to eat on Mother's Day. Ah, so we decided last year all we're going to do is order in and sit and watch TV or be with and watch Judah play. We're just going to be together.
Hmm.
Like that's it. Like doesn't have to be this fancy thing. And I'm like, yes, we get to hang out. You know, I don't know what we'll order. I have no idea. But there's no fancy. There's no flowers. And I'm okay with that. It's just like a very different feeling. It's a
Yeah.
very different feeling. And I want to say Happy Mother's Day early to all the mothers. And I know that that word happy is very loaded as well. So I would say for you on every day, it's your day if you're a mom, and you deserve all the love in the world and do the work so you can get that and give it. So that's my last word.
Mm.
Thanks, Deanna. I think
Hmm.
it's really important because we've been through second, third, and fourth wave feminism, and a lot of that has been like being a mom is like some kind of oppressive patriarchal thing.
Mm.
And so it's really important, I think, that um, we be willing to celebrate maternity and motherhood, because none of us would be here. I'm sorry, it just it
Yeah.
doesn't work any other way.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
beauty,
And those other things are very important. They have their place.
right?
But so does
Mhm.
so does motherhood.
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. I guess my point is that um, we're there's we're always dealing with the recovery from our own specific experience, but we're also living in a culture that has these challenges culturally. And it's sometimes we don't see how those are impacting us, even as we're struggling in a way that we consider to be on our own, but we're not really on our own. We're working on we're not just John and I've talked about this in the podcast. I'm sure you've
Oh
recalled
yeah.
this. We're not just on our own, but when we heal, the world heals, and
Yep.
Yeah.
when we don't heal, the world also doesn't. So this is the paradox of the work that we do, and in living in a world that's got its challenges. God bless the world, and I'm grateful for the world just the way it is. But I'm grateful for moms, and I'm really grateful that you chose to take this particular time to come on and share your experience and not just your experience, but what you also just said, your heart's desire.
Thank you. Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. It's a really, really important topic. And I
Yeah.
really hope that it has encouraged some moms or challenged some moms out there, or even if you're not a mom, to explore your own relationship with your mother. And one, I do want to give this one quick resource. If you're a motherless daughter, your mother's deceased. This work by Hope Edelman. It's called, I don't know if you can see that very well.
Yeah.
It's called Motherless Daughters. It's been out there about 30 years. This was a seminal work that changed my grief and how I worked through my grief over my mother's loss. And it's for any daughter at any age who's lost her mother, whether she lost her mom when she was 8 or her mom was 80 when she died. So it's really good. So check that out if that's you. So
Thanks for sharing that resource. And
yeah,
before we close and let John have the last word,
always.
I want to I just like to offer an invitation to other mothers that do this work. If you'd like to come on the podcast and share your experiences or thoughts, let me or John know, and we'll make that happen. And also, if you'd like to experience this work in one of the meetings that we've been talking about, there are at least 4 accountability practice meetings that I know they're all on Zoom, and information on how to hook up with those will be at the end of the podcast. So contact me or John, and we'll be happy to let you know how you can join the meeting and learn about how to participate in this process yourself. So, John, 3
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. Well, I just have a lot of gratitude for Deanna coming on today and sharing your experience and allowing me to heal a bit more around my mother's stuff too. So I really appreciate you. Thank you. And thank you, Marty.
You're most welcome, John. I appreciate you. Happy anniversary, guys.
Thanks.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
And
That's a big deal.
It's cool.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
So let's close and just have a moment of gratitude for each of our moms and our grandmoms. And I love you, Mom.
Yes, we
I
didn't
appreciate
talk too
you.
much about grandmoms.
Yeah. Well, next time, Deanna, you'll just have to come back.
Yeah, I'll do the granny perspective.
I welcome that.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Yes.
Thank you.
Take care.
See you next time.
You betcha.